Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Friends of the Wissahickon Creekside chat. We're here today with one of our closest best friends, Gail Farmer, Executive Director of Wissahickon Trails. And together we work on the full length of the Wissahickon Creek, but so much more than just the creek. You may know Gail and Wissahickon Trails by their previous name, Wissahickon Valley Watershed. So we're thrilled to have Gail here today to talk about the rebrand, more importantly, some of the great work going on, and then answer any questions folks have. I'm Ruffian Tittman, Executive Director of Friends of the Wissahickon, and we are stewards of the Wissahickon Valley Park, and we also work with great partners like Wissahickon Trails on the stewardship of the watershed. You can see some of the things we do here: preserving our 1,800 acres, working on our over 50 miles of trails within the park, and engaging individuals in the park, in the watershed, and all our surrounding neighborhoods. So please check us out at FOW.org. And let's get to it. Welcome, Gail. Good to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Nice to see you, Ruffian.
So I was wondering if we could start with the name and the rebrand from the Watershed Association to Wissahickon Trails, and then we can flow like a stream to your projects and our great work together.
Yeah. So we have launched our rebranded name. We just passed the 1-year mark since our launch, and the decision to rebrand our name, it was a tough one because name is so closely associated with identity. But in the end, we were swayed by a couple of factors to make this change. And one of the factors was that our supporter and member recruitment over the last 20 years was just barely keeping up with attrition. So that was concerning. We currently reach less than 3% of the people who live in the watershed. And so we need that number to be growing, not shrinking. And then the second thing that we were swayed by is the data shared by our communications consultant, which demonstrated that most people, sadly, don't know what a watershed is. And so having that word in our name has been a barrier to connecting with new people because you have to know what the word means in order for the name to have meaning. So the board decided this was a necessary change to keep our mission growing and moving forward. So then we had to find a name that didn't include jargon. We didn't want to have the word conservancy because a lot of people don't know what that means, or land trust, both of which reflect the work that we do, but they aren't commonly understood terms. But we also wanted a name that encompasses everything we do. And ultimately, we chose Wissahickon Trails because trails, they are the gateway connecting people with all the work that we do. So for example, when we protect open space, trails are how we share that work with the public. When we are working to improve the health of the Wissahickon Creek, trails are how people get to experience the creek. So trails are what connect people with nature, and they're also what connects people with our mission. And so we felt that was, that was a great connection for us and in terms of our name. But I do want to be clear that this is a rebranding effort for marketing purposes. Our legal name remains the Wissahickon Valley Watershed Association. And most importantly, our mission has not changed. We're still focused on the watershed and teaching people what that is and why it matters. We're still actively protecting open space, working to improve the health of the Wissahickon Creek, working to improve habitats and ecosystem health on our 12 nature preserves. And we still engage the public through our trails programs and volunteer opportunities.
Well, I think your rebrand. Sorry, I'm getting a little echo here. Hope that's just on my end. I think your rebrand timing with the pandemic, while obviously not coordinated, certainly as far as a launch, I would imagine getting folks out and seeing how many trails you have. I think certainly even as a partner made me more aware of how much land you have accessible for the public to enjoy. So
yeah, it was an interesting thing that we happened to launch right at the start of the pandemic. And, much to our surprise, there was some great synergy for us in that, as you're indicating, because everything changed in our rebrand right around the time we went into shutdown. And so it was just when people were looking for things to do outdoors that we were much easier to find, because we also made a new website and, did a full rebrand in addition to just changing our name. So yeah, we had some great, I think we got 225 new supporters last year, which is more than usual. And of course, I'm sure as you saw down in the Philadelphia portion of the watershed, people, visitation rates were off the charts for our trails.
Hugely.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out to everyone listening, 24 miles of trail, folks. That's 24 miles of trail you might not have visited yet. And if you haven't, you should check it out. I think you have some great maps that have also been developed around that.
Yeah, right. We just did a whole new set of preserve maps. So we have 12 nature preserves. So each of those preserves, you can find it online at wissahickontrails.org. You can download and print maps for each of our preserves for the trails. And then we also have, we just printed, I'm looking for a copy on my desk, but I must have taken it out somewhere, a Green Ribbon Trail map. So the Green Ribbon Trail is our signature preserve and trail, and it runs all along the Wissahickon Creek, starting in Upper Gwinnett Township at Parkside Place in North Wales, and goes all the way down through Fort Washington State Park. And soon we'll connect directly with Forbidden Drive, which will be an amazing connection that the county is working on. But yeah, so now we have this expandable, I'm showing you with my hands, but I don't have the map, expandable trail map that shows you where all the restrooms are, where all the gateways are, where you can park, and how you can access the trail. So we're excited about
Excellent. And folks, be excited. There's restrooms along this portion of the trail, so you can plan a long trip.
Yep.
We're very excited about bathrooms here in the Wissahickon. So Wissahickon Trails, but you're still focused on the watershed, and we're part of the same watershed. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of your projects going on in the watershed and set us up for why that's important?
Sure. Well, so for those of you who may not know, a watershed is all the land area that when the rain hits the ground, the water flows into a particular water body. And so the Wissahickon watershed contains all the land where when the water runs over it, it flows. Ultimately, its ultimate destination is the Wissahickon Creek. And then, of course, then it flows into the Schuylkill and then the Delaware River. And so we work in the Montgomery County portion of the watershed. The watershed is 64 square miles, and about a third of that is in Philadelphia, and Friends of the Wissahickon and Philadelphia Parks and Recreation care for that. And then the remaining 2/3 are in Montgomery County. And so Wissahickon Trails, for our 64-year history, one of our strategies for protecting the health of the Wissahickon Creek has been land protection. So we've protected 1,300 acres in the Montgomery County portion of the watershed, and also, restoration and stream health. So one of the projects we were able to complete in 2020 was, it's called the Wissahickon Riparian Restoration Project. And basically what we did was, near the headwaters in Upper Gwinnett Township, we basically took this very narrow, highly channelized section of the creek and converted it to a beautiful, wide, meandering creek bed with low banks that allows the water to breach the banks and spread out into this native floodplain that we created. So during storms, when stream volumes increase, instead of the power just growing as all that water moves downstream and continues to accumulate, it'll hit this restoration area, and the water can breach the banks and just spread, and that'll slow everything down, and it'll allow the water to percolate into the ground, which will reduce the volume And that ultimately reduces the destructive and erosive powers of the water flow. So this was a
so
big,
important. So
yeah,
important to create these opportunities for this natural slowdown of the water. You know, we spend so much time and money on various sections on resiliency, trying to keep our banks in place. But wherever we can find these opportunities for the water to breach and have the floodplain to recharge and slow down is so important. So
yeah.
thank you from all of us living downstream for doing this.
Yeah, well, you got to start upstream, right?
Yes,
you got to start upstream. And we were only able to do this project because it's tough to find places where you can reconnect to the stream with the floodplain between development and then, of course, a lot of the area adjacent to the creek is forested. But this stretch of creek we worked in, it's PECO property, and they have a power line going through there. And so they have to keep the vegetation low. And PECO has been a really great partner with us in the past. We've worked with them on converting the turf. They used to maintain it as turf, converting it to meadow. And so when we brought this idea for this project to them, you know, that, hey, we could turn this area into a floodplain so that it slows the water down and allows it to percolate, you know, they were very receptive and great partners every step of the way. And we had M.Sc also as a neighbor of that property, and they helped. They came in towards the end. It took us 5 years to raise $1.4 million for this project. And they came in at the end and bridged our funding gap.
Excellent.
And, you know, supported the construction work because we needed to use some of their site to stage. You know, this was like a big capital construction job.
Takes a village, folks. You know, we've got two great corporate partners, a nonprofit partner, and I'm sure some support from your municipalities in the state.
Exactly. Yeah, it definitely was a community effort.
And if the community is interested, can they check it out, or is this private?
No, they can come check it out. If you go to Parkside Place in North Wales, it's where the Green Ribbon Trail starts. And just before you turn off on the Green Ribbon Trail, if you look to your right, that's the project site. The trail goes right to it. It's very visible, and it's going to be beautiful in the spring when everything, you know, all the vegetation starts coming up.
Check it out, people. All right. So we talked about the headwater stream and riparian restoration location, and here's a map. But you can, I'm sure, also find this on Wissahickon Trails website as well. So you mentioned something, conserving land is a big part of what you do. And of course, at Friends of the Wissahickon, we partner within the city with Chestnut Hill Conservancy on land conservation. But what are we talking about when we say things like that, Gail? What does that mean to everyone, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Ruffian, because people often think, you know, that Wissahickon Trails, that we're the ones who make land protection happen, you know, because ultimately often we acquire the properties and we create the public preserves. But the truth is, the 1,300 acres that we've protected, it only happens because landowners, property owners, and community members want it to happen, right? They're the ones who make it happen. We just enable community members to actualize their conservation values. So like in 2020, we had an opportunity. We were approached by a couple of property owners for an opportunity to acquire 31 acres of undeveloped open space in Whitpain Township. And this was located in an area that was a conservation land protection priority area for us. We have several other preserves adjacent to this 31 acres of undeveloped space. And we were thrilled, you know, to be able to work with these, you know, local community members who really made it happen through their time, connections, and dollars. So we do partner with community members to protect open space. And what that means is, you know, when we acquire the property, sometimes we acquire it and of course we turn it into a public preserve, and we're going to put trails on this preserve, and we'll have an opening probably in the fall sometime. We'll invite everybody out to come celebrate with us. And sometimes when we protect open space, we also put, we can basically acquire the development rights. And then we have a legal interest in the property. We may not own the property,
Right.
but we own the development rights, so it can't be developed.
So people can still maintain ownership of their property,
Yeah.
but they've given up some of the rights that they have to the use of the property.
Correct.
And I think public access happens to be one of the best things to give back if you can. I'm just talking to folks who might be listening who have a large parcel of land that they'd like to donate to or protect. You can really benefit yourself and your community through some of these techniques. But I think, as we've all found in the pandemic, we don't have enough public open space, and this is a great way to create some of that or encourage it. We're not actually making more land; we're just accessing it.
That's right, making it accessible.
Well, this will be exciting. We'll want to hear about the grand opening of the preserve and stomp all over the trails and check it out. 31 acres is a nice chunk of land to add. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, very exciting.
Right. So one of the other things that I think about when I think about the watershed and our work together is water quality, and all of the work around trying to improve water quality in the Wissahickon Creek, sometimes just maintaining the quality we have right now. There's so many municipalities that have some sort of relationship with the creek, and it's a creek with a TMDL, total maximum daily load, that regulates what can go in it. And one of the big things that you've been working on, and we've been cheerleading from the stands loudly on this effort, is something that is referred to as the TMDL alternative. And I'm wondering if you might want to talk a little bit about that effort and what that means and where it's going.
Yeah, I would love to, because this is a really important effort initiative. So TMDL is regulatory jargon, right? That stands for, as you said, total maximum daily load. And it's the measure that EPA and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection use to quantify limits on pollutants. And because the Wissahickon Creek has been designated by the state and EPA as what they call an impaired waterway for aquatic life, basically means the water quality of the creek is not good enough to support aquatic life. Municipalities and the Wissahickon Watershed, municipalities that sit within the Wissahickon Watershed are required to meet load limits for a number of pollutants. So that's the simple explanation of what all that is. And what has happened in the Wissahickon Watershed is that the municipalities, there's 13 municipalities, and there's 4 wastewater treatment plants at present that discharge into the Wissahickon Creek, and they're also held accountable. So these parties came together and said, how are we going to meet these requirements? And maybe it would make more sense if we worked on this together rather than separately. And so that's how the Wissahickon Clean Water Partnership was formed. And this is a collaborative initiative among these municipalities. And they've been working for the last, 3 or 4 years to craft a shared water quality improvement plan for the Wissahickon Creek. So this is a really big deal because municipalities often don't work that way when it comes to shared environmental problems. And there's a lot of potential for these municipalities, by working together, not only to be efficient in how they work to improve the water quality in the Wissahickon Creek, but also to actually be impactful. So, Wissahickon Trails, we think this is a very forward-thinking, smart, and challenging approach to addressing a shared conservation problem. So we've been working with the partnership for the last 4 years as advisors, and the group has come a long way. They have a draft water quality improvement plan. They submitted it to DEP and EPA. I guess it was in spring last year, and now they're in a process of conversations and dialogue with these agencies to to revise the plan to everyone's satisfaction. So it's pretty exciting. It's, as I said, it is a really important initiative, and I hope if any residents of the municipalities, Springfield Township, Lower Gwinnett Township, Upper Gwinnett, Whitpain, White Marsh, Ambler Borough, North Wales Borough, Abington Township, Cheltenham. If you live in any of those municipalities, I hope you will, when you interact with your elected officials, say encouraging words about the Clean Water Partnership, because this partnership has the potential, it's needed, and it has the potential to do a lot of good for the Wissahickon Creek and for our community. So they're taking a storm water management approach to water quality. So that means that these municipalities are trying to figure out how they can work together and across municipal boundaries to do a better job of taking all that rainwater that runs over our roads and goes into our storm drains and helping it to actually infiltrate into the ground as it is sort of supposed to, and not go in the storm drain. Because what many people don't realize is we all know what the inlet to the storm drain looks like, right? Like on the side of the road. But a lot of people don't realize that the outlet is actually a pipe that comes out of the bank of the Wissahickon Creek or one of its tributaries. And all that water is just piped directly into the Wissahickon. And that, with all the pollutants and sediment and oils, and it carries in there. And then plus just all that volume of water in a short period of time is its own destructive power. So it's a really good thing.
It's a great thing. And to have everyone working together will be tremendous, right? Because the water doesn't know that it's left Ambler Borough and gone somewhere else. And, we have big municipalities and small ones, and each has strengths and benefits and challenges to this. So if we can all work together, I know we're thrilled down here in Philadelphia because Philadelphians are drinking this water. And as the creek travels south, it is picking up velocity and it's undercutting banks. And so all of those things, it's a great thing. And we continue to loudly cheer. And I would echo Gail's statement that if you live in one of these townships and you can drop an encouraging word that your elected officials have been working on this, it's not easy to change the way you do business with the state and the federal government. So this is a big lift for all of those folks that they've taken on. And we need to, let them know that we believe in it and want it to happen. I am seeing a question here. Do we have a sense of when this will be enacted?
That is sort of this, what is the $100 million question? We're working with state and federal agencies, and it is impossible to say what the timeline is going to actually look like. Well, all I can say is things are moving forward, that the process is installed, and that's saying a lot, I think, especially coming out of 2020. It is still rolling forward.
That's great news. Really great news. Before we wrap up today, are there any upcoming programs or things you'd like to highlight with folks who are listening, or where people can get involved? I'll just say probably if they're making out a check to you, they could do it either to Wissahickon Trails or to WVWA.
Absolutely, yeah. Any name is acceptable on a check. Well, this weekend we have our annual birdathon, and then we also have there's the Philly Nature Challenge. You use iNaturalist.
Yes, we're excited about that.
Right, we're very excited. We want to see Philly, come out this weekend and find a lot of nature and put it up on iNaturalist. You can find details about either of those events on our website. It should be right on the homepage, really. But yeah, and then the last plug I will put in for our programs is we have a community science program where we ask people who live in the watershed to help us with our work. And the community science work is a lot of it is wildlife monitoring. So we have projects where people help us with our regular monitoring on salamanders in different habitats, birds, insects, whatever fauna you like. We probably have a project where you can help us collect important data, because we do habitat improvement work, but we also measure. We want to understand if that work is having the desired impacts, and we do that through ongoing monitoring, and that's only possible with the support and help of the community. So look up that program too if you're interested. Data,
folks. We need data, right? Yeah. And so it looks like kids can get involved with that as well from those photos. So it can be a family affair.
Absolutely.
Gail, it's been so much fun catching up with you today, and we'll look forward to the grand opening of your preserve, and we should have a party when the TMDL alternative gets enacted.
Absolutely. We should just have parties more often in general. Yeah.
Well, as we move out of this pandemic life, we'll get back to party life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Ruffy, and this is
happy to do it. Great to see you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.